Welcome back, Josh Malin. Thank you for joining me today. Obviously, star of this year's Porsche Carrera Cup. Today we're going to have a look back on your 2021 season. But first of all, and most importantly, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Very excited to look back on your season. Something I wanted to start with. Obviously, we did an interview, quite near the start of the year. Did you have any idea that you'd be in the Porsches this year when we spoke? Because it was quite a late deal, if I remember.
It was, yeah. The start of the year, I was basically, it was unknown whether I was actually going to have a drive or not. We were toying with the idea of going down. I think I mentioned the GT Pro Ginetta route, but
Yeah,
that was canned for this year. Failing that, went to GT4 Super Cup. That's what we were thinking of, and then all of a sudden the Carrera Cup drive came available, and well, yeah, I snapped that up within a half a second because as you well know, I've always wanted to be part in the Carrera Cup, and yeah, it's been just as special as I imagined it to be. So yeah, I'm really quite happy with the decision, even though it was very late on, and I didn't actually have. I think I only had time for one test day, and that was
yeah.
it. So yeah, not ideal in terms of season preparation, but we got there and we've made it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was going to say because obviously, generally there's not even that much testing these days, but you obviously, had hardly any. We started the season at Snetterton on a very hot weekend. How are you feeling going into the first weekend?
I was, well, as I'm sure you can imagine, I was very nervous. Being having only done the one day at Silverstone Grand Prix, sort of the first day in the car, and then the official Porsche test day on the Wednesday before Snetterton, the Friday testing. So technically, I had 3 days testing before the race
Yeah,
weekend, but um, yeah, I was very nervous. Went into qualifying, with coming into such a sort of a high level championship and having little testing. I wasn't sort of expecting like, yes, you're going to like pole it by a half second kind of thing, and like that was never going to happen,
yeah.
and it didn't.
No,
So and I didn't. I tried not to let it sort of get to me because it's like, oh, I really need more seat time kind of thing.
yeah,
Because I think it was that point. I think it was. I don't think I was quite a second off, but all things considered, I was very happy with my overall sort of performance in qualifying and both the races as well at Snetterton. But fun fact actually, in qualifying, I never got a chance to do a race start. So my
really.
first race start was in race one.
Jeez, wow.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that wasn't it wasn't the best start. Let's just say that. But yeah, it was. I didn't stall it. I didn't stall
yeah.
it. So that was a bonus,
Yeah,
I suppose.
I mean, I would have thought, to be fair, Snetterton's not a bad circuit to do your first start on. It's not like it's not like Alton Park where there's lots of bumps, and I presume that makes a bit of a difference on a race start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Brands Hatch is
Yeah,
probably harder to get the car off the line because if you haven't warmed the tires up properly, you start spinning and then you start like sort of edging up because obviously it's slightly banked.
yeah,
So you start edging up the hill and sort of going along, crabbing almost with the wheel spinning. So yeah, no, it could have been worse, but we got there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, moving on to Brands Hatch, obviously the first trip was on the very short Indy layout. How was that? Because those cars are so unbelievably quick. It must have been quite strange to drive them on such a short circuit. And that weekend the racing was really intense, especially in the Porsches.
Yeah, it was. I mean, in qualifying, because obviously it was such a short circuit, I think I was about half a second off. I can't remember who polled it. But yeah, I was about half a second off, and that put me 10th. And that was like a big sort of hold on.
Yeah,
That because I think I qualified seventh or something or eighth in back at Snetterton.
yeah,
And but obviously the margins are so fine because it's such a short track. It then produced some fantastic racing. I had a cracking battle with Charlie Rainford.
Yeah.
I think it was was it in the first race? Was it in the second? First race. Charlie Rainford and Jake Rattenbury. And then I managed to get past them. And I think Harry King and Dan Camish had obviously the incident,
Yeah.
let's say, and then Harry spun off. So that gave me essentially 2 free positions. So I think I got, what was it, P5, my first race at Brands, and then in the second race I got drawn for reverse grid front row. I was in P2.
Yeah.
Jamie Orton was on pole. And at that point, I was like,
Yeah. That must have been, honestly, yeah.
Only fourth race in the Porsches. And yeah, being on the front row with Camish, King,
Yeah.
Jewis, Hannafin, my teammate Will Martin, my race pace was okay. It was there. It was getting better at this point. But I struggled to get the car out the blocks. I really struggled with tyre warming properly. Now, like towards the end of the season, it got a lot better. But yeah, warming the car up, I did sort of struggle with in a way, because it was just sort of, you had to concentrate on warming the front tyres rather than the rears as well.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what my downfall was, is that I was concentrating on the rears too much, whereas the rears, they'll just warm up anyway.
Yeah.
Due to the nature of the car. So yeah, that was probably what I struggle with. And then going from Brands to Alton.
I think it was Alton Park next.
I think it was Alton Park.
Sure, it was. Yeah.
That's really bad. That wasn't even that long ago.
I know. Honestly, I think to be fair, because especially with the Toka package this year and obviously last year, the calendars were changed around so many times, and I think for so many years as a BTCC fan and Toka fan, we've sort of had the same calendar for so long. But yeah, obviously carry on with Alton Park, which was quite an interesting weekend, really, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So in qualifying, I should say in Friday practice it was a bit damp.
Yeah.
And I went into Druids, and I backed into the barrier.
Yeah.
It didn't cause that much damage, but I had to go to the medical centre for a 5 mile an hour kiss with the barrier.
Oh really? Oh well, there you go.
Yeah. And I was like, "What? Why have I got to go here?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's track policy." So I was like, "All right, okay, fair enough." But yeah, my pace in the damp and the wet was actually really good. It was more of a performance leveler, because I do like sort of the car moving around me and driving in the wet. Obviously, that's going to happen quite often. And yeah, in qualifying, I managed to. Where did I qualify? I think I qualified 6th in front of Harry King.
Yeah.
Which I was shocked at. Third race meeting, and I put it in front of Harry King. It was like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
I've actually done all right here. And yeah, the first race, what did I do in the first race? I went too wide going to turn 1. I locked up my inside front, and I lost a couple of positions, and I got stuck behind my teammate Will Bratt for most of the race. Now, Alton's like really, really hard to overtake at, because it is so narrow. I mean, it was hard to overtake in the Ginettas the year before. But in a Porsche, obviously, the car's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So it was definitely very hard to overtake. But yeah, I was just stuck behind Will Bratt for the majority of the race. And I finished 8th. So it was kind of frustrating, because I couldn't move forward like I sort of used to be able to. But that was just sort of part and parcel with jumping into the Porsches.
Yeah.
So race 2 comes along. I think I'm starting 8th, and I think Harry King made contact with Hannafin, and Hannafin went off.
Yeah.
And collected Will Bratt right in front of me.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it happen in front of me, and I just sort of backed off, and I'm like, right, there's going to be a crash here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it took Will Bratt off. So that put me up to P6, which doesn't sound like much, but I was able to hang with Camish, King, Will Martin, Jewis did sort of drive off at the front,
Yeah.
because he walked away with that race. But the battle for second, oh yeah, Lewis Plato was in there as well, of course.
Yeah.
And the battle for second was amazing. And I did have a nibble at Camish going up the hill as he, I think he went wide at Knickerbrook. And yeah, sort of, I did chicken out because I didn't want to like sort of affect the championship race, as it
Yeah.
were. Then it was sort of, we came into the season this year, and people were expecting it was just going to be Camish and King having it out, and
Yeah.
turns out it was a very different story. But it wasn't as though sort of Camish was the fastest all the time, because Hannafin was there, Jewis was there, Will Martin was there, obviously Harry King was, and then, believe it or not, I managed to get my nose in there a few times throughout the season, which we'll come on to later. But yeah, I was actually quite proud with Alton Park keeping up with the front runners, and that sort of gave me a real confidence boost going into Knock Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously coming on to Knock Hill, that was from what I remember, that was a pretty good weekend for you. Obviously, first podium, that must have been really special, and quite a pretty very cool circuit to do it as well. What was the Porsche actually like to drive around Knock Hill? Because that must have been really exciting.
It was really exciting, but at first I actually struggled to gel with it.
Yeah.
On the Wednesday test, I think it was raining, and I was okay in the wet with it, but in the dry, because obviously it was so much quicker than the Ginettas, I struggled to sort of adapt, which is sort of a bit unlike me. But eventually, I did. I got the cogs going, and away we went. But it didn't come together in qualifying. I think I was quite disappointed after qualifying. Actually, I was like, well, it's just going to be another weekend of finishing 7th or 8th, or blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. And I wasn't happy with my time. More frustrated at myself, because looking back at the footage, I could see where all the time was,
Yeah.
but I wasn't in the car. It felt a lot quicker. So it's a bit frustrating in qualifying. Race 1 comes, and where did I finish? I think I finished 6th, because unfortunately Will Martin had a few track limits penalties in front of me. So that promoted me to 6th. And I got drawn out for reverse grid pole, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, as I think that dramatically improved my mood.
Yeah.
This was on the Sunday. And yeah, when I heard that I got called out for reverse grid pole, I was like, oh God, right, here we go. So yeah, went off from pole in race 2, and managed to hold Kieran Jewis off until the first safety car. Obviously, as you know, Nathan Harrison's car, the oil, I can't remember, the oil was dumped on the track.
Yeah.
His car caught fire, and yeah, it was pretty spectacular watching the footage back on ITV.
Yeah.
And that left a load of oil through the chicane. Obviously, as I approach being the leader, being the guinea pig of the situation, I took the chicane quite slowly in comparison to other people, and I still went off on the gravel. This is the thing that wasn't shown on the TV screens. I went off on the gravel. So did Kieran behind me. I think a load of others did too. And I think possibly a stone that I might have kicked up went through Kieran's radiator.
Right.
And that is probably why he obviously was dropping fluids and had to come in and unfortunately DNF'd.
Yeah.
All the slippery surface were waving, flags were waving, and I saw them. Clearly people behind me didn't, and I did take it quite gingerly, even though I did still go off.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky in the grand scheme of things, and then went off again from the safety car. Quite a good restart, actually. I was quite proud of that. And yeah, I think Harry King got past Lewis Plato because he went wide at turn one, locked up. And then obviously Harry caught me, passed me with a pretty good move.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just drove off as I was defending from cars behind me, because I was by no means the quickest car on that track, not by a million miles, to be honest. I didn't really have the pace at Knock Hill, but
Yeah.
it is hard to overtake. And if you put the car in the right position, you can pretty much hold your position for a large majority of the race. And that's what I did. I managed to hold off Camish. I managed to hold off Lewis Plato. I think I held off Hannafin and Will Martin as well. So that was a very big confidence boost going into the next race. And that was Croft.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Croft. And that wasn't such a good weekend. But actually, while I remind me,
Yeah.
this is the
Oh,
that's
I
the
mean,
trophy that I
that's
got.
very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice bit of a silverware for Carrera Cup. Hopefully, if we're in it next season, we can get a bigger one of these.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, second is not bad. First of the losers, but I'll take that. I'll take that. Yeah, it's proper bit kit.
yeah, absolutely. That having stuff like that must be really cool to even now and in future years look back on. I was going to mention this season of Porsche Carrera Cup, in my opinion, has definitely been one of, if not the best season we've had of it. How special has it been to compete against the likes of Camish and Harry King, who after last year he was so dominant, and I think a lot of people thought it would just be another one of those seasons, but it really wasn't, and we had a really good year.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're totally right. Everyone thought it was going to be, as I said earlier, Camish versus King.
Yeah,
but I don't think they could have been more wrong, to be honest. It was Camish versus King for a time, and then Jewis came into the mix. Hannafin came into the mix. Will unfortunately had a few sort of incidents towards the start of the year, so he wasn't sort of in the title fight as such. But he was probably one of the quickest boys out there. And then I managed to get my nose in, obviously at Knock Hill, and then at Donington later on. But yeah, it was super special just to be on the grid in the first place, but to be around Camish, who is a multiple Carrera Cup champion.
Yeah.
King was the reigning champion going into this year. Jewis is a very established driver. He's been in F3, so he's very experienced. Hannafin, he's already done a year of Carrera Cup, has had a fairly sort of strong winter testing program as far as I can tell. And Will, he's just rapid, having done another year of it as well. So yeah, to be up there, it's actually quite humbling for me, because at the start of the year I thought, oh, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to sort of touch that sort of that end of the grid. And I managed it. I did manage it. And sometimes things just come together and things go your way, and other times they don't. So yeah, it's been magical, really, really magical. I don't think there's any other word that can describe this year, really. It's been amazing.
Yeah, good. But obviously I presume it must have been challenging at times. You obviously mentioned situations where you were starting right at the front against a lot of these really successful and talented other drivers. Have you felt it be more tense and more nerve-wracking for you as a driver to be in such a prestigious championship?
I'd say so, yes. I mean, especially being at the front, like when you're on like sort of reverse grid, sort of front row, reverse grid pole, it's I wouldn't say it is nerve-wracking, but I wouldn't say it's scary as such.
Yeah.
It's just like, right, I've actually got to deliver here to sort of get myself noticed properly, which is at the start of the year, I just wanted to sort of be there or thereabouts. But to be like sort of at the sharp end and to have the David Addison and Tim Harvey, the commentators, egging me on,
Yeah.
it was it was really, really special. Really was. Even just thinking about it now, it's just it's just mega. Like,
Yeah.
to think like last year we were in the Ginetta GT5s, little dinky G40 Ginetta,
Yeah.
160 horsepower. Now up in a 500 horsepower Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. It's I still struggle to like sort of absorb that information, because it's a childhood dream fulfilled, and I didn't think I'd get there so early on in my racing career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the Ginettas, which was a big part of your career leading up to this. So obviously, to this time last year, today, you won the championship. So yeah, that must be really cool to look back on.
It's brought a lot of memories back, in more ways than one. But having had not so good 2020, with obviously my granddad passing away, and obviously COVID as well, and all the lockdown, and not really being able to do much amongst other things, it was a real sort of uplifting moment, and I made the best of a bad year.
Yeah.
I've actually got my trophy here as well, from last year. I've had this year now.
Yeah.
This has been sitting in the lounge, pride of place. And even just looking back at this, it's really, really special.
Yeah.
Like, back in 2018, I was only racing Mazda MX-5s at sort of club level.
Yeah.
2019, jump into the GT5s and do all right. And then a year later, 2 years after I've done MX-5s, go and get the Ginetta title, which was really special. And that was actually a really special race. I should probably watch that later. Reminisce about what happened a year ago today. But in more ways than one, today is quite a special day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been brilliant so far. I won't keep you for too much longer this evening. Looking towards Croft, that was a bit of a tough weekend, but I presume that was still, it was, I presume every time you go out in the car or went out in the car, it must have given you more confidence going into the next race or the next session or whatever.
I mean, the problem with Croft was qualifying, because unfortunately one of my drive belts snapped.
Yeah.
So I only qualified 14th. I didn't actually get a decent lap in, which is unfortunate, but one of those things. And then the first race, I think I finished 9th. And then in the second race, I managed to take my front splitter off, after going gravel tracking at turn 1.
Yeah.
So that was fun, driving with an understeery car, because it's amazing like the difference a plastic front splitter has on the car. Literally, I was going through the S's and going down like towards Sunny Inn, and honestly, no, never again. I turned and like nothing happens, and I'm just like, right, okay, I need to back out of this. So it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't a great weekend, but character building, and it sort of made me sort of control the car differently. Obviously, driving it with no front splitter for a whole race, I kind of like sort of knew how to sort of fettle with it or fine tune it, while I was going round. So it did get a bit easier towards the end, but it was never the car it was in like race 1 when I actually had a splitter. And then following on from that, it was literally a week later. We go to Silverstone, where I saw you. It's great to meet you and your family, by the way.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the results at Silverstone again weren't the best in the world. Sorry about that.
No, no worries.
But yeah, it wasn't ideal.
Yeah,
So I got caught up in an incident in race one. I think qualifying again wasn't great because the margins are so fine, but at Silverstone National, such a short circuit,
yeah,
and yeah, race one I got involved in an incident with Lewis Plato. He started spinning, and I tried to avoid him, and I think made contact with my rear left. Obviously, the safety car came out because there was another shunt. Unfortunately, Mika Stanley went into. I think as you'll come around Woodcut, there's obviously the pit entry, the track, and then the grass.
yeah,
He went sideways onto the grass and hit the wall, like separating the track and the pit lane. So it was quite a nasty shunt, actually.
yeah.
And obviously that brought out the safety car. As the safety car went on, though, I started to get a slow puncture pressure warning come up on the car,
Right, yeah,
and I come in, get that changed, and start catching up. And apparently, I was doing green sectors during a safety car, which wasn't ideal. But I had to like sort of catch up.
yeah.
I was doing it safely, but my felt like a purple sector during a
Yeah.
safety. Imagine like the grief.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no. Joking aside, I think I went from like almost stone dead last to P14,
Yeah.
15, and then I went from P15 to P9 again. I can't remember. That's really bad. But yeah, it wasn't the greatest results wise at Silverstone. But again,
Yeah.
the pace was there. My race pace was good. I was good. Technically, if I was at the front, I could have technically been keeping up with Will Martin,
Yeah.
who was actually quicker than Harry King during the second race. So that was a bit of a surprise. But it's always a case of what could have been, what should have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, Silverstone aside, we move on to Donington. Now, I like Donington.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it was my first ever race. Got my first ever podium there, my first ever race in a car.
Yeah.
Got a win there in 2018 in MX5s. I won my first Ginetta GT5 race there. Got the lap record in 2019, but that was broken in 2020. I won there again in 2021. No,
Yeah.
2020, sorry. And then in 2020, I wish I won in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been nice.
It would have been. And then obviously this year, I managed to stick it on the podium again in second.
Yeah.
So qualifying was actually quite strong. I think I qualified fifth, sixth. Will Martin picked me at the very last minute. So I was like,
yeah,
with him back at the awning. No. Yeah. Race one comes, and I think I finished fifth. Unfortunately, I think I got a stone through his radiator or something. I don't know what happened.
yeah,
But he started dropping a load of fluid. And that actually nearly caught me out a couple of times. I think it was going through the chicane and going around Redgate as well. It was very slippery.
yeah,
Following him directly behind. And then, yeah, finished fifth in that one. Got drawn out for reverse grid pole again. So I was like, oh,
yeah.
don't mind if I do. So then we're sort of doing that in the awning and as we're going out to the assembly area. And I was conscious that Lorcan Hanafin was starting alongside me. Now he's really good at start.
Yeah.
And obviously I have Camish, King, Jewis behind me as well. And I managed to get a really, really good start. I managed to gap Lorcan off the line, which I was like really surprised with. Because that doesn't usually happen. And yeah, I lead for the first lap. And unfortunately going on to the second lap at turn one, lock an inside front and go a bit wide. So that leaves me on the outside, Lorcan there, and then Jewis coming through on the inside. So
Yeah.
technically, going down towards Craners, it was three wide.
Yeah. And that's not somewhere
At
you
the
want to be
point,
three wide.
no, and at the point, I didn't actually know it was three wide.
Yeah.
Because I only saw like Jewis at the last minute, and he managed to get in front of me, and that's where he stayed for the rest of the race. Now, what I was expecting was he was just going to drive off into the sunset, and yay, we've won another race. But I managed to keep up with him the whole race, hounding
Yeah.
him all the way. And then I had Camish. I think I had Lorcan up my chuff a couple of times, and obviously Harry was behind that as well. And yeah, holding off Camish and trying to attack Jewis, that's quite a tough combination.
Yeah.
I locked up many times. My front right tire was like a cube, so I was getting a lot of vibrations going down Craners. But apart from that, I managed to hold it together and keep the pace up.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I lost a bit of ground on Jewis, but then caught it back up really quickly. And yeah, I managed to bring home second, which is probably what I consider one of my best performances on track.
Yeah.
Possibly. Ginetta finale aside, I'd say that race, it did test me a hell of a lot. So yeah, it was a magical experience, and coming out the other side of that race, finishing second, but with about that much to Jewis in front of me, I was really proud, really proud of the progress that we've made, not only over the weekend, but over the course of the year as well. And I felt it was really sort of nice to repay the team by finally giving them another sort of podium to add to their tally. So with all that sort of positive energy, I thought, great, we're going to Brands GP. Never done this track before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was quite optimistic. I was like, right, okay, we might not have done the track before, but I think we can sort of get a good sort of haul of results. Wasn't expecting anything like the podium that I got at Donington.
Yeah.
And yeah, the weekend just went to pot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Qualifying wasn't bad from memory. Wasn't great either. But race one, I was doing okay. I think I was in, whereabouts was I? I was in 8th or 9th position. Excuse me. I was fighting with Nathan Harrison, and I think it was Charlie Rainford as well. Because I didn't get quite a good start. And yeah, I managed to get past Nathan Harrison after much prizing. Eventually got past, and a corner later, I go too hot into the corner and clip grass and spin reverse into the barrier, and took me ages to get back going.
Yeah.
So I was basically near as makes a difference last, made up a couple of positions, but I finished that race 16th.
Yeah.
And then because I think someone in front got either a DNF or a disqualification from the previous race for like technical infringements, I started 17th.
Yeah.
But the second race, I was very proud with, even though I only finished 9th. I was really proud of the progress that I made in that race, because I started 17th, finished 9th, so I made up 8 positions. And once I got past Ross Wiley, I took my front splitter off again. Happy days.
I think I saw this. Was this coming out of Graham Hill?
Yeah.
On the straight, right? So yeah, so we were parked on the south bank, and we have a big screen behind us. We could see you all coming through Paddock Hill, and then obviously background with Druids. And I see you going around Graham Hill, and you went flying over the grass. And but yeah, at least it looked cool. But yeah, to be fair, in that race, it was good to see you come through the field really, and yeah, it was definitely entertaining.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I well, me and the team decided that we'll save a new set of tires for the race, and that actually did help a lot.
Yeah.
Because when I took the splitter off, the car didn't actually feel as bad as it did at Croft, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
obviously we were on used rubber at Croft, but here we were on new tires, and I did lose a position to Ross Wiley. I think Jake Rattenbury as well, but I managed to get past Jake again. But yeah, I was sort of keeping with Ross after that excursion, and yeah, even though it could have been a better result, I was still really happy with the progress that we made over the weekend, and especially in that race. And then again, as I said, I was really proud of the progress that we made across the year as well. Yeah, it's quite nice to look back on it and reflect on what you sort of could have done better, what you did well. But now I think it's just sort of a case of not forgetting the year, but putting that to one side and trying to concentrate on next year, because that's obviously the new car, the new 992 Cup car is now being used by Carrera Cup. So the trusty 991 facelift is now being put to rest, unfortunately. So it's a bit emotional in a way, taking part in the 911's, in the 991.2's final race. But looking forward to see if we can get on the grid, and B, if we do, looking forward to driving the 992 next year, because it will more than likely be another year of Carrera Cup, I'd say. But obviously that's out in the open at the moment. We need to get the money behind us first. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm certainly hoping you'll be back in the Porsches, and yeah, it must be, looking back on this year, it must sort of be a confidence booster going, like, sort of looking into next year after such a strong first year in the championship.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything big because, as I said, it was my rookie year, and results wise, we didn't always get what we wanted, but the progress and the foundations have been laid, and hopefully I can transfer those skills that I learned from the 991 into the 992. So yeah, if we can get the money together, we can get testing as soon as possible, and then hopefully we might have a chance of at least having a sniff at the Carrera Cup title. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Josh, so much for coming on and doing the season review. Thank you for doing the interview early in the year. Thanks for the support this year. And it's been really cool following you in the Porsches in what's been such a great season.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, yeah, it was great to chat to you during lockdown. It definitely helped pass the time. But yeah, no, thanks again for your support as well. All the support I've had, yours included, and your families as well, is always really appreciated, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So yeah, fingers crossed we can carry this over into next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we've got the off season now. How much do you switch off from racing, or is it always on the go, really?
I'm always on the go. I've got my sim there that I sort of try and keep sharp on. But the sim helps to a certain degree, but
yeah,
what you really need is proper seat time, because if you start using the sim too much, you'll start using sim techniques, and then if you don't go on the sim that much, then you'll be slow on the sim. So it's like, which one do I sort of prioritize? But yeah, I think we'll have to prioritize the real one at some point.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you very much, and have a good break while it lasts, because I'm sure it won't be long before you're out there again, and all the racing will continue, I suppose.
Yeah, fingers crossed. No worries. Thank you very much for doing the season review, and fingers crossed we get to do it again soon.
Absolutely.